We're going to go over Chapter 2, the Modern Crime Lab. So we're going to talk about the different types of crime labs and how they are organized. So in this video, we are going to go over Chapter 2, the Modern Crime Lab. In this video, you're going to learn about the different types of crime labs and how they are organized. Crime labs are forensic science labs. I am just writing crime because it's shorter and easier to say. Why the number of crime labs are increasing. The difference between federal, private, state, and municipal labs. And then the different divisions or departments of each crime lab. And the accreditation crime labs need. So the modern crime lab, in the mid-1960s, there were approximately 100 crime labs in the United States. Today, there are more than 400 publicly funded crime labs, which means they're not private crime labs. More than 80% of them are affiliated with the police departments or agencies. And there's two main reasons for this. First one is the case Miranda versus Arizona, which we'll go over. And two is an increase in crime rate in the US, which equals a high demand for crime labs. So more crime labs have been built and to help meet this demand. So court decision, Miranda versus Arizona. This ruled that during arrest, officers need to state the Miranda warning, which requires the arresting officers to advise criminal suspects of their constitutional rights and their right to counsel. That's the thing you always hear is you have the right to remain silent, you have the right to blah, 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 blah. Because of this, there are fewer defendant confessions made, which makes the prosecutors need to find more evidence, hard evidence, through police investigations. So the more physical evidence that they need, the more tests that forensic labs have to do. And then also the increase in the crime rate in the United States since the 1990s. There's been an increase in drug-related crime, which increases the number of drug samples sent to the crime lab. And all the drugs seized by law enforcement must be sent to a forensic lab for chemical analysis before they can be used as evidence in court to make sure to prove that they're actually illicit drugs, whether they're illicit illegal drugs or prescription drugs. They need to know what kind of drug it is before they can go into prosecution. The crime labs had to greatly expand their chemical analysis sections. This is also true with marijuana lately. They have a lot more to do in crime labs because they need to test each batch they get in or each piece of evidence they get in to see if it's cut with any other drugs. So there's also makes the chemical analysis section more important and busier. And also DNA technology has increased a lot. So crime labs are overwhelmed by the demand for DNA analysis of evidence. Since you only need a tiny amount of a sample now, we used to need a lot bigger sample. Now you can have a very tiny amount of DNA or a very tiny piece of physical evidence that could hold DNA. That means the crime labs are doing more DNA analysis for cases than they did before. So as of now, crime labs have about more than 250,000 samples backlogged. They'll do samples from the cases, current cases beforehand, like priority, but there's a lot of cold cases that they want to do DNA evidence on to try to overturn verdicts or catch criminals that they never caught before. So for private laboratories, there are a few crime labs that provide particular specialties to law enforcement. So the Orchard Cellmark is forensic DNA, so that's their main thing that they do there. Battelle Corporation is arson, and Searchy Corporation is fingerprinting and trace evidence. National laboratories. The United States doesn't have a single federal forensic laboratory with unlimited jurisdiction. There are 5 federal laboratory systems, and they have been established to deal with evidence of from violations of federal laws rather than state or local. Since there are 5 different systems, they don't all have the same specialties and don't all have the same divisions, which means you need to use all of them in order to have enough services, enough analysis. So there's not one that can do everything. So there's the FBI, which is run by the DOJ, Federal Bureau of Investigation. DEA is Drug Enforcement Agency. They look at drug-related crimes. They're also part of the DOJ, Department of Justice. ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So they look at crimes relating to firearms, explosives, tobacco, and alcohol, as the name suggests, and they are part of the Department of Treasury. United States Postal Service, USPS, they inspect the mail, and they're also in charge of delivering the evidence to and from labs. And then the USSS is the U.S. Secret Service Forensic Lab, which has the largest ink library, which I thought that was a fun fact. And in 1994 crime bill, the Congress mandated that the Secret Service do forensics and help with matters involving missing and exploiting children. So they still do that today. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation units, they have the most divisions and the broadest divisions of all of the 5 national laboratories. They have chemistry, DNA, explosives, firearms and tool marks, forensic audio, video, and image analysis, latent prints, question documents, materials analysis, special photographic analysis, structural design, trace evidence, investigative and prosecutive graphics, and hazardous material response. State and municipal laboratories. So there are state-based facilities that serve both statewide and local agencies. If the city is smaller and it doesn't have local jurisdiction to have its own lab, then their evidence will be sent to the state-based lab. Every state has its own established crime lab. Some states have developed statewide systems of regional laboratories to minimize duplication of services and to maximize inter-laboratory cooperation. So that means that there have been labs across all the states, or in these states, in different areas of these states, so that they're not all evidence isn't sent to the statewide or sent to the municipal laboratories where you are getting 2 different places doing the same analysis, which is a waste of time and money. So they want to maximize this cooperation so that they're doing things together and they're coordinating so they can learn about the same things, the same analysis, get the same results as each other. that is currently in California, New York, Illinois, Michigan, Texas, Virginia, and Florida. So there are local crime labs that serve city and county governments and operate independently of state crime labs. Some larger cities operate their own lab, which is independent of their respective state labs, so that the other labs aren't getting overwhelmed with samples. In Pueblo, we have the CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation. They also have one in Denver and one other place I can't think of. I interned at the CBI in Pueblo, which is a great place to intern. They're not doing internships right now because of the pandemic, but if you're interested in it, I would try to keep that in mind. They have different divisions, not a whole lot of divisions, but they have the essential divisions of the crime lab, and they also coordinate. The crime scene team is also operated out of the same building, so you can get a lot of information from them, plus information about the analyses. So divisions of the crime lab. They're typically assembled into divisions so that it's easier, you know where to send the piece of evidence. There's the biological and serological division, chemistry or toxicology division, trace evidence or microscopy division, ballistics, firearms, and tool marks division, latent fingerprints division, question document division. So this is more of a graphic to show you. So biological and serological are anything pertaining to body liquids, DNA, semen, fluids. They look for DNA and other markers in it. Chemistry and toxicology, they look at unknown substances, drugs, and poisons. So chemistry is more unknown substances and identifying different drugs within drugs, because a lot of drugs are cut with other things. Toxicology, look at the amount of drugs or poisons or substances in the body at the time of death. Oops, sorry. And then trace evidence and microscopy, anything small enough that requires a microscope to see it. Ballistics, firearms, and tool marks. This is guns and weapons. Latent fingerprints. So it locates, photographs, and compares latent prints to known candidates, known samples, and to the automated fingerprint ID system so that you can make a match if the person is in the system. Latent prints are ones that are harder to see. Question documents. Documents to identify the writer and detect a forgery or alteration, like a forgery of a check. You can look at this, they look at the documents to see if it's valid or not. So you also have to accreditate the labs. If the crime lab is not accredited, does not have accreditation, then their findings are not considered valid. You need to have strict accreditation for the evidence to be brought there and for you to analyze it and for it to be upheld in court. If it's not, then it could be thrown out. For their findings to be widely accepted, labs must establish their credentials as forensic laboratories, and this is typically done through accreditation by professional organizations. So you have the American Society of Crime Lab Directors, the National Forensic Science Technology Center, and the College of American Pathologists. You don't need all three of them for your lab. You just need to be accredited by one. In addition, labs can perform and be certified specialized services. So for example, they might have a lab that specializes in the analysis of teeth and bite marks. and this may apply to the National Board of Forensics of Odontology for special certification for that specialty area. To warrant accreditation, a crime lab must meet minimum requirements established by the certifying authority. So this is true pretty much of every lab, chemistry, biology, anything where you're doing analyses. You need quality control, which makes sure that the test results meet a specific standard of quality. Quality assurance, it serves on the check of quality control. So the quality assurance measures are intended to monitor, verify, and document in its performance. So you do quality controls to make sure that you know quality control, you know what the results should be. So when you carry out your test and you get the correct results, then that is your quality control to make sure that it goes there. Quality assurance is to monitor and verify and document its performance, which means it documents how well the quality control is going. Testing protocols. So there's procedures and processes followed by the laboratory to ensure it performs tests correctly and accurately. A lot of the times you'll see it as SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. So some people call them recipes if you're in chemistry and doing a lab. It tells you what you need to do step by step, including quality control and a quality assurance test as well. And so every analysis you do, you have to follow those SOPs. Then sometimes you get some proficiency tests, which determines whether lab workers as individuals and the lab as an institution are performing up to the standards that are required. So you can do it two ways. One way is you're given a sample and you know the results of the analysis. So you're given a sample and someone else knows the results of that analysis. So you, the worker at the lab, do the result or do the analysis to make sure that the known results, they match the known results. If the lab workers' results don't match the known sample results, then you have a problem and you need to look at quality control. It can also be a blind study, so the laboratory and the workers don't know that they're being tested. They just are given a sample as if it was any other sample, but then the results are sent off to someone else to see how it compares. Or it's a known study where they're aware of the test and then consult any resources necessary. So in this video, you learned that the number of crime labs, I hope you learned, that the number of crime labs have increased because of Miranda warnings, increased in crime, especially drug crimes, and the advancement of DNA technology over time. There are private labs, which provide certain specialties, and then there are 5 national labs, including FBI and DEA. There are state labs that serve state and local areas, and then local labs that serve cities and counties and operate independently of state crime labs. So what I said before about the CBI in Pueblo, when I was there, they had a map of all the area they serve. They serve Pueblo County and a lot of southern Colorado. And then they showed me the CBI in Denver, what they cover, which is mainly the Denver area. So Pueblo covers a lot bigger area where crimes are committed, but they still have around the same amount of samples or evidence to analyze because the population in southern Colorado isn't as dense as it is around Denver and Fort Collins. Common divisions of a forensic lab are biology, serology, chemistry, toxicology, trace evidence, microscopy, ballistics, firearms, and tool marks. latent fingerprints, question documents. And then forensics labs all have accreditations through professional organizations, and then they can be certified in addition to those accreditations, be certified for specialized services. And then labs must pass quality control, quality assurance, proper testing protocols, and proficiency test to be accredited and to maintain their accreditation. And that's it.